Hi guys, and welcome to this slightly more casual video than normal. Oh, it's so casual. I'm loosening my tie and I'm rolling up my sleeves. Okay, let's get into it. So what we're doing in this video, guys, is we're gonna be reacting to a few critic reviews on Metacritic for Days Gone. You might say this is slightly overdue. The game's been out since last year now, but you know, it did take me a long time to complete it. Eons, you might say. It was a long game. Anywho, so let's get into this thing, shall we, team? Okay, so starting with, we're not gonna go through full-length reviews. We're just gonna read the little excerpts they have on the site, because if we did full-length reviews, that would take far too long, team. Far too long. So let's not bother with that. We'll just go for the small snippets and take it from there. Okay, so the first one. Superb zombie slaying combat and enjoyable motorcycle gameplay are integrated perfectly with a well-paced story. But the game's major highlights are the terrifying zombie hordes, which are unlike anything seen in a video game so far. Yeah, that seems about fair, I think. Yeah, that is something that stood out to me about Days Gone, was just the sheer size of the hordes, particularly, you know, the infamous sawmill horde, which is enormous. It's like, I suppose the only other thing that really springs to mind with the kind of numbers of zombies or whatever you want to call them that could be compared is, you know, like the Call of Duty Zombies games. So that is a very impressive part of it. I do certainly agree. Okay, so next review. Even with all the promotion we're seeing now, Days Gone still carries the aura of a title that could be miscast and possibly overlooked at a glance. Like it was for me a few years ago. You don't know until you play, and this stands as one of the more pleasant and satisfying surprises of the year for me. It's been a long road to this game, but the ride is worth it. Yeah, okay, fine. I don't really have anything to say about that. It's pretty generic, isn't it? It doesn't actually go into any particular detail. I suppose you'd have to go on the full review if you wanted to find that. Probably, anyway. Next one. Days Gone is a blend of multiple open world and zombie games. Even though the gameplay stays pretty much the same throughout the entire game, the acting, riding your motorcycle and the survival bits make this game worthwhile. Yeah, the bit to kind of extract from that is the bit about it staying the same throughout. That's the kind of main detail they kind of drop there, isn't it? Which, yeah, I suppose for the most part, the gameplay is pretty similar throughout the game. There are a few bits which aren't really replicated quite so much as you go along. A few more sort of one-off style missions, but yeah, no, for the most part, that's probably a fair comment. Right, we're getting to some less charitable ones now, perhaps. Days Gone is an above-average open-world game that is brought down by a weak first act, poor shooting, and a lot of technical issues. Okay, well, the first part of that review is probably just a matter of opinion, really. But as for the poor technical issues, yes, I think since the game's been out a while now, I think a lot of those issues have actually been patched. But when I first started playing it, I noticed a few sort of glitches. Not nearly as many as some people were complaining about, actually, because you know, there were complaints about how many glitches there were in the game. I noticed a few, but none that really detracted from the playing experience too much. And again, now that the game's been out for quite a long time, I don't really encounter many or if any glitches now, actually. They seem to mostly have been patched. So that review, you know, maybe it was justified at the time. It's not really so relevant now, I don't think. Anyway, next one. The game meets the baseline level of quality we might expect from a big budgeted joint, yet it remains a tiresome, empty experience. Oh, okay, well, again, that's an entirely subjective statement, isn't it? There's no detail given about any sort of technical aspects there at all. It's so, you know, fair enough. If that's what the reviewer found the game to be like, then that's fair. I don't really have much to say about that. Moving on. Days Gone checks all the boxes of a proverbial PlayStation exclusive. but never feels like it's stepping on anyone else's toes. Despite the games, film and TV that you can easily draw comparisons to, Days Gone handles it all in such a way that it has its own unique identity. The more I played it, the more I loved it, until finally finishing the long journey and not wanting the adventure to end. Sam Witwer is brilliant as Deacon St. John, and his journey of survival, humanity and self-discovery through a deadly world via motorcycle is a memorable one that shouldn't be missed. Yeah, I partly agree with that. I mean, I like the game, but yeah, okay. Well, to me, it's like the main character's like Deacon's journey was kind of, you know, it was all right, and I enjoyed going through it and playing the game, but it was a bit mediocre, perhaps. Anyway, you know, when compared to other games like, let's say, The Last of Us, which, you know, one of my favourite games ever made, I don't think it really compares to that. I said for the Let's Play series I did of Days Gone, I mentioned a few times at the start of it that, you know, it was very similar to The Last of Us, but it's really only similar in terms of aesthetic and gameplay. The actual kind of drama and story is not really that similar to The Last of Us, I don't think. The Last of Us is much better in that regard, and I think it's impossible not to compare it to a game like that because the aesthetic and gameplay, etc., is so similar, and because it's clearly, I think it's, you know, it's clearly to a certain extent modelling itself off probably specifically that game. So it's hard not to compare them because of that. And while they're quite different in that, you know, Days Gone is open world and Last of Us is linear, the things that The Last of Us did well in terms of the story and drama and stuff stand out a lot more than they did in Days Gone, I'd say. Days Gone I like in a different way to The Last of Us. I mainly like it just because it's fun to play, it's fun to ride around the open world environment. It's fun to take on the hordes and the camps. It's just a fun game, really. Whereas The Last of Us was more of a impressive cinematic experience as well as being a fun game to play. If you see what I'm saying. I hope that recorded okay, because I just realised I've been turning my head away from the mic a lot of times when I've been talking there. So if the sound quality dipped in and out, I apologise for that. Anyway, moving on. Days Gone has an astounding and rich open world with great characters and a lot of quests to accomplish. Bend Studio is finally becoming great. Sony must be proud. Yeah, fair. Again, not much to elaborate on there. Very broad statement. Nothing to argue with on it. I think I generally agree with that. Let's scroll down a bit further, see if we can find a few more contentious ones, shall we, team? Days Gone follows every post-apocalypse cue in the book. It does combat, level design and bike riding well, but struggles to overcome a basic story. Yeah, that's probably fair. I was thinking I was going to try and find some reviews that I disagree with, because I actually like the game overall. So I thought by, you know, scrolling down to the more negative ones, I might have something to disagree with, but that's actually probably mostly fair. Yeah. Anyway, I don't think the story's that bad in Days Gone. It's just a bit derivative, and it's a bit generic, and it takes so long to get going as well. Like, it doesn't really get interesting until you're about, let's say, approximately 65 hours into it starts to get interesting, probably. I can't really remember, maybe approaching the halfway mark or maybe after the halfway mark. Up till that point, it's like, it's okay. It's not, you know, so dull that it doesn't compel you at all. I wouldn't even say it's necessarily dull at all. It's just a bit bland and derivative. Anyway, moving on. I was ready to love Days Gone, and in some ways, I still do. It didn't love me back, though. If C. Bend had cut the length by a third, cleaned up the technical problems and had more variety in level design, it could have been one of my favourite games of all time. I don't know why I'm taking the piss here. It's sorry, reviewer, whoever you are. It's tragic in hindsight, because I can feel the love and passion flowing through it. Unfortunately, the shared appreciation of our homeland pales in comparison to the astoundingly long list of problems on display here. It's heartbreaking, but only homesick Oregonians like myself need apply. Again, that's possibly a bit irrelevant now that, well, a large chunk of that review where it refers to technical issues, because like I said, a lot of those have been resolved now. As far as detecting the love and passion that flows through the game, but not feeling it really, the actual game itself lived up to the kind of, let's say, enthusiasm that the developers felt that the developers put into it. Well, I can understand where he's coming from there, actually, because it did feel like a lot of hard work and effort was put into the game, and it was perhaps more mediocre than would have been than it should have been, given how much effort was put into it. So that's probably fair. Days Gone is far from the worst specimen of its genre, but in a year already packed with 50-hour-plus endeavours, it rarely makes the case for its own existence. Rarely makes it... yeah, that's really just a subjective comment again. There's no... I mean, I suppose he makes reference to other... He or she, I don't know, whoever reviewed this, makes reference to other games of similar length, but... And you know, calls into question the relevance or appeal of what they might call yet another game that's of such length. But if you like it, you're gonna play it, and if you like that if you like that style of game and games that are that length or whatever, then the more the better, perhaps. You know, so you know, I wouldn't necessarily go along with that review. There is no denying that Days Gone is visually impressive. There is no denying that Days Gone is visually impressive, heightened by expressive motion capture and a lifelike wilderness. The signs of life that should make for a great experience are all there, but in every shining sunset, detailed human face and open clearing, I couldn't find any shred of soul. I don't agree with that. I understand what they're saying, because like I mentioned earlier, again, if I kept the part in where I mentioned this, I do think the story was a bit derivative and generic in certain respects, but you know, based on that, I sympathise with that comment. But I thought the aesthetics of the game and the really quite striking and beautiful, realistic open world environment was... that's where I kind of felt the more soulful elements coming through, actually. Just this really impressive simulation of nature. That's what really impressed me about the game, and that's where I felt the soul coming through. And the changing weather and all that, and the wildlife that you encounter. So I don't agree with that comment overall, because while the soulfulness, let's say, might not have come through very well in the actual narrative, it certainly did in terms of the world it put you in, and like I said, the simulation of nature that you got to experience. Bend Studio made a great game with a rich, believable and captivating story. They've also resisted the lure of trends. There's no multiplayer, no loot boxes, no game as a service plans, just a very solid and finite single player experience that makes it a rare gem these days, maybe one of the last of its kind. Yes, that's a great point. All great points. Yeah, I agree with that. I wouldn't, as far as multiplayer goes, they're referring there to like online multiplayer, which, you know, I don't really use that on any games. So yeah, I agree there. Something I do kind of miss from older games, like, you know, the PlayStation 2 era of gaming, is split screen mini games or even being able to do split screen stuff in the main game itself. That was always good, and very few games include that now, which is a shame. And especially on a game like Days Gone, I mean, maybe it wouldn't be feasible for a game like that, which is in such a kind of vast open world environment. But I do always appreciate some kind of split screen option in games. That's something. So whenever a game doesn't have that, it's lacking for me. That's something I think should be reincorporated into modern gaming a bit more, actually. Anyway, Days Gone might be one of the most entertaining survival games we've ever played. It presents a strong narrative and systems that make the game always unpredictable. It may not be a must-have, but it sure is a damn fun video game. Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, It's probably also fair to say it's not a must-have, but it's certainly a lot of fun to play. I really enjoyed playing it. It took me a very long time to complete because it's such a long game, and I only played it in kind of because I did a Let's Play series for it. I only played it in like a maximum of an hour at a time because I was breaking it up into different episodes. So that also prolonged the process, I'd say. But anyway, yeah, no, fair enough. Moving on. The tension is not always extremely high, and the story is missing the epic nature of The Last of Us. But if you're looking for an awesome single-player adventure for those long spring evenings, then Days Gone is the game for you. Yep, fair. That kind of reinforces some of the stuff I've already said in this video, actually, doesn't it? So, yeah, I agree with that. Days Gone puts Ben's studio once again on the map of all PlayStation gamers after many years of oblivion. Do they mean Oblivion the game? No, they don't. They mean actual Oblivion. And, well, not actual Oblivion, but figurative Oblivion. Yeah, because I really needed to explain that, didn't I? Anyway, while it doesn't deliver any meaningful innovations in terms of open world and gameplay mechanics, it's a fun game that sports gorgeous graphics and a surprisingly great story / cast of characters, easily paving the way for a sequel to the stories of Deacon the Drifter St. John. Yeah, I think that's fair. I would certainly like a sequel, actually. While I've said really most of what was enjoyable about the game for me was the actual gameplay itself, like it's just a fun game to play. I suppose that in itself would, for me, be enough to play the sequel. But I also, the story also kind of, with what happened at the end, if you know what happened at the end, I won't spoil it here in case you don't. But that was quite interesting, actually, and that got me interested in what would happen in the sequel. So I actually did a video a while ago. I've done 2 videos on this, actually, on features that could be included in the sequel to Days Gone. I'll link one of them here. There you go. If you're interested in that, click that card and watch it, and then tell me what you thought of it, and then close your browser and get on with the rest of your day. Go for lunch. Go for a swim. Get dressed. Go to the gym. What am I doing? Sorry, I've been recording for a while. I'm starting to get a dry throat. A good game for the PS4, nothing more. Days Gone does not take any risks nor propose anything new. Yeah, I think it doesn't kind of do anything drastically new. The way it kind of feels to me is like it's kind of a amalgamation of a bunch of things that lots of other previous games have done really well, and Days Gone kind of brings them together and puts them into one package, and maybe in so doing takes like a small step forward in progressing the genre, I suppose. That's the way it came off to me anyway. But yeah, no, I certainly understand where they're coming from there. Days Gone is a grim, beautiful B-movie. Its action and writing are full of pulpy thrills, and by the end of it, I found myself liking a character called Deacon St. John, an achievement in itself. Yeah, you know what? While I never disliked the character of Deacon, I was always fairly indifferent to him to start with. But it's funny, because the game is so long, you're playing with this character for such a long time. You kind of, well, I did. I sort of got to like him by the end of the game, just because I've been playing with him for so long, and that sounded weird. Just because I've been playing with the character for such a long time that you get so well acquainted with him, and it was kind of weird when I finished the game, actually, because it had been such a long game, and you're playing in this world for such a long time that it's weird to leave it. I still play Days Gone, which you'll know if you watch this channel. I still upload videos for it, so yeah. I took a bit of a break from it after I'd finished, and I missed it, kind of. Yeah, no, it's just a fun game to play. I'd certainly recommend it. Moving on. Days Gone is a very enjoyable game with a beautiful setting, some interesting ideas and a good story, but Ben's studio has bitten off more than it could chew, and it shows. It takes too many things from open world adventures, and the execution doesn't always live up to the expectations. Overall, it's entertaining and solid, but a less ambitious project would have end up being better. I hate that kind of comment, to be honest with you. whenever anyone says something should be less ambitious, like that's no. I look, my take on that is like, you should always try and be as ambitious as you can with these projects, and if you fail, then fair enough. But you shouldn't be aiming to make something more mediocre than is possible. You know what I mean? So whenever anyone says that, I dismiss it. I completely disagree with that comment. Whether or not they failed to live up to the ambitions they'd set for themselves is another matter, but that doesn't mean they shouldn't have set their ambitions so high. They absolutely should have. One always should with projects of this nature, I think. Unless you're just making like a mobile game or something like that, in which case you know what you're doing there. You know what you're setting out to do is going to be quite basic by its nature. But for a game like this, no, you should try and be as ambitious with it as possible, and they seem to have done that. So I certainly applaud them for that effort. Days Gone overcomes loose controls, familiar mechanics and gameplay loops, and a well-worn setting to tell a very relatable story featuring one of my favourite characters in recent years. Oh, well, that's very generous. I wouldn't go quite that far. I say it's very generous. It wasn't too generous to start with, where it talks about overcoming its flaws, essentially. But as far as the control, I didn't have any particular issue with the controls. I think they're pretty decent. Familiar mechanics, yeah, that's fair. It does have fairly familiar mechanics to previous games, but that's not necessarily a bad thing if it uses them in a good way, and if, like I mentioned earlier, it kind of amalgamates good features from previous games and puts them into one new package, which I think it does do. Moving on. Days Gone features a huge and beautifully looking open world that's great to explore. The game is, however, plagued by many bugs that take away from the experience overall. It's a shame since the story, characters and enemies make the game so much fun to play. Again, I agree with the first part about the beautiful open world. I've already mentioned that, and that's actually my favourite feature about the game. But as for the bugs, yeah, again, not really relevant now because I think a lot of those have been patched. Like the winding roads of Farewell Wilderness that contain both serenity and danger, Days Gone is a journey with a winding range of emotions. Though the game borrows heavily from other open world games, Bend Studio has done a solid job melding it together into a package that's more than the sum of its parts. Yeah, there you go. Again, that's another review which kind of reiterates what I've already said. Yeah, it does, to repeat myself again, it does amalgamate features from previous games into a new package and does a good job of it and produces something that's fun to play in so doing. So yeah, no. With jaw-dropping graphics, fantastic music, great gameplay, likeable characters and terrifying hordes, it is hard to tell that Days Gone is Bend Studios' first truly big-budgeted game. Even though the game's not as polished as the best first-party games from Sony, it still might end up on one of the year's best single-player experiences. Oh, great. Yeah, that's complimentary. Don't really have much to say about that, but no, that's fair. Nice compliment for the team behind it. Okay, we'll do a few more, then we'll end it. Days Gone tries its best to bring something new to the table of an already overused post-apocalyptic zombie shooter genre. It gets some things right and some things not that great, but as an overall experience, it's a game packed with a great atmosphere and some darn fun exploration. If you liked games like Mad Max, or you're in absolute love with the zombie survival games, try not to miss this one. Yeah, I never played Mad Max, didn't even know there was a Mad Max game, but yeah, no, that's fair, and I do like the genre quite a lot, which is why I bought the game, and it certainly is a lot of fun to play. So I would recommend it if you like the genre. For the gameplay specifically, that's the main draw for me, I found. And again, it's not particularly groundbreaking or innovative or original gameplay mechanics or anything. There are other similar games in terms of the gameplay, but it is still a lot of fun to play, and it's provides you with a fun open world environment to play through. It has rough patches, but Days Gone is a good time. Ripping across the vast wilderness looking for hordes to wipe out is undoubtedly fun, and Deacon's sort of comic book story is competent. Is it an excellent open world game? Not quite. Is it worth playing? Oh yeah. The gorgeous and well-built environment is a treat, and the mechanical twists on the Sony's first party formula and make Days Gone a nice spring surprise. Yeah, fair enough. They don't really go into that much detail there, apart from that they talk about the vast wilderness and the hordes, which are both points I agree with. They're two of my favourite parts of the game as well. Well, are the hordes? Yeah, I guess the hordes are. I got kind of bored of the hordes after a while because there are so many of them, and I took so many of them out in succession. There are videos on my channel of me taking out every horde. I separated them out into separate videos, and I think, if I remember correctly, there are 40 hordes in the game. So yeah, it got a little bit repetitive doing that many hordes in a row, but that's only because I was doing it for a gaming series, whereas if it was just that's how many there were and I was just, playing, dipping in and out, whenever, then that wouldn't have been an issue. That would have even probably been a good thing. So yeah, and it was as well. Like I still enjoyed doing it for those videos. It's just that doing so many in a row starts to get a bit repetitive. But no, it's still fun all the same. Days Gone is one of the better zombie games in recent years. It doesn't beat out the Resident Evil 2 remake. Very few games do, as being my go-to zombie fix, but it's an entertaining, if somewhat unevenly paced adventure through post-apocalyptic Oregon. Yeah, that's probably fair. There are parts in Days Gone where other people have said this as well, I think. And there are parts in the game where it feels like you're getting to the end of it, and it feels like you're reaching the end of the game, and then it turns out you haven't. It just keeps going, and not only does it keep going for a few more missions, it keeps going for several more hours. Quite a lot, in fact. It's, you could be like maybe only half or 3/4 of the way through when it feels like it's getting to the end, but then no, there's still a lot more to go. That's not a bad thing, by the way. It's great value for money, because games are really quite expensive, and so I think the more content they provide, the better, in my opinion, because you're paying a lot of money for them these days. Okay, I think that's going to do it for this video. Thanks for watching. I hope you've enjoyed. What did you think of these reviews? Did you agree with any of them? Did you disagree with many of them? Or did you agree or disagree with my opinions on them? Let me know in the comments below. Let me know what you thought of Days Gone if you've played it, or if you plan on playing it. Let me know that as well if you want to. But yeah, that's going to do it for this video. So leave a like if you enjoyed this video. Subscribe for more videos like this and other gaming videos as well. Click the bell end to receive alerts of when a new video is uploaded. That's going to be it. Thanks for watching. See you next time.